What's good, people? I'm Kinell, and this is Sinister Cinema, where we get deep into the guts of the stranger side of cinema. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to drop us a little like, give us a subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you know when we got new things dropping. Leave us a comment, it all helps with the algorithm and all that kind of thing. If you're listening on an audio platform like Spotify or Apple Music, why not drop us a 5-star review? It's just for algorithm reasons. I don't care if you slag me off in the actual review, but drop us 5 stars and that helps boost us. Anyway, this is Sinister Cinema, on with this show. Yes, people, Kinell's Sinister Cinema is brought to you by Forgotten Sons Apparel. Forgotten Sons Apparel is a York-based streetwear brand drawing inspiration from alternative culture, tattoos, film, classic TV and cartoons from our childhood. In their own words, if you like our stuff half as much as we do, then we like it twice as much as you. I've got a lot of love for Forgotten Sons Apparel. They've been supporting me since way before I was doing this. They were supporting me in my battle rap career. You might have seen me rocking some of their garms in battles on Don't Flop and other leagues. I'm delighted to have them as a sponsor for Kinell's Sinister Cinema, and I'm encouraging you all to check out their ish at forgottensonsapparel.bigcartel.com. Safe. Yes then. So, DJ, producer, artist, dancer, actor, absolute rave era renaissance man, Rory, how's it going?
Greetings. I'm doing well, you know. I'm all right, you know. I'm good.
Good to hear it.
Got all kinds going on at the moment, so life is good at the moment.
That's what we like. That's what we like. We like to see a lot of things happening because not everything's going to go well. So if you've got enough things happening,
it's going to be an interesting year. This year ahead is going to be a very interesting year. I think a positive thing, but I think people are gradually getting their lives back now, aren't they? And it's looking like some interesting things lined up, and I'm looking forward to this year.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. People are doing things, man. People are ready to tick some stuff off their bucket lists.
Yeah. We've been cave dwellers for too long, haven't we?
Yeah, but now people want to get out and make stuff happening. Starting with what should hopefully be the first released episode of the new Kinell's Sinister Cinema. As you can see, leveled up a lot. Studio thing now. Guest thing now. 4K thing now. There's a lot going on and it's going to be good. And we're kicking off, if everything's gone well, which it might not, but hopefully it does, this should be going out on the 22nd of February 2022. That's a lot of twos. So today we are talking about sequels.
Yes, we are.
Sequels get a lot of flack, man, but there's a lot of sequels which I believe surpass the originals. There's a lot of sequels.
I agree with that. Absolutely, 100%. It's very interesting, actually, when you start to actually think about it, how many decent ones there actually are. And I mean, I know over the last few days I've been thinking a lot about the starting with the originals, then moving on to the sequels, and then looking at and contrasting the two, and then seeing that actually in some of the sequels they really are the better movie. And I suppose a lot of that as well is because we've got you find that once you've established something in the first film, you've got all that sort of plot stuff out of the way, and you can just drop straight into the action. And I think that's the benefit of a sequel movie, because you just don't have to worry about setting up the characters and all that. You just go straight to it, get yourself stuck right in there.
Yeah, that's it, man. Flipping, you've done the origin, so you can just crack on. You can really explore what you've set up in the first one, or you can subvert it completely. So there's a lot you could do with it. So today we're going to be doing top fives. Have you got a top five?
I have. Well, I'll confess. It might be a top 7 because it's so hard to narrow it down. So I mean, what I might do is I might just fly over the extra 2 choices as well. You never know. Let's go through it and see how we go.
We'll stick a couple of runners up at the end. We'll have a couple of worthy mentions, because the thing is, I don't think you could get it down to 5. I came up with the idea. And also, it's a really good subject, so it might be something that we want to return to on Sinister Cinema. So I will say my 5 are 5 of my all-time favourites, but I will not say this is a definitive top 5.
I reckon mine changes with the tide. You know, so that I I did actually have a definite 5 for you a couple of nights ago, and then I've been looking and reviewing them. I thought, oh, you can't ignore that one. I can't ignore that one. And it's, you know, you go into a top 5 for different reasons, you know. So I mean, depending on how you're feeling, that top 5 could change, couldn't it?
I've had exactly the same. Like I kind of reached a point last night where I've got to say that this is the 5 that I'm going to talk about, because there's just, you can't really, like, because if they keep changing, you've got to have a deadline.
Yeah, you've got. I find as well as that you look at some of these films, and it's not necessarily all about. You know, you get a movie, and it's, oh, that's a great movie, but it doesn't necessarily make it into your top 5 just because in terms of it being a sequel and it being a good sequel. I think there's more applied to it. So there's personal things in there. So, for example, if I were to jump in with one of my suggestions.
Okay, let's kick this off
then. Yeah, and this will show you what I'm trying to say. My first one I'm going to go for is Superman 2.
Ooh, interesting selection.
Now, you know, you could say about that in terms of quality, it's not the greatest movie ever made. I think it's a great movie for a lot of reasons. I know there's a lot of childhood things attached to that as well, but what I think about this film is at the time I remember when it came out that it just captured that summer. It was just, everyone was just mad. Everyone went Superman 2 mad. And I know the original Superman, this is the Christopher Reeve Superman, of course. Everyone went crazy for the first one, but when the second one came out, by that point it was such a phenomenon. And, you know, you'd had the Star Wars thing. You'd even have things as well like Battlestar Galactica, I'd say, that really hit home. So people were loving the sci-fi. And I kind of count something like Superman in that sci-fi genre as well.
It was probably the birth of the summer blockbuster era, really, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah, that's right. And so when Superman 2 came about, I've never seen anything like it, really. I feel like it was the first time I really saw that huge blockbuster type of campaign. And I just think, even though it was quite a theatrical piece. I mean, you had people like Terence Stamp as General Zod, and you couldn't get more British theatrics if you tried, could you? You know, and but it worked.
Which works for comic book type content.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's the classic thing, isn't it? You know, if you want a baddie, get an English person. But the thing is that Charles, oh God, I've forgotten his name. Terence Stamp. He was just I was going to say Charles Dunstan. What? Terence Stamp. He's just so good. He's just so good at that level of intensity, and even I suppose because he's an English actor, he's slightly camp as well. He's got that English camp, but you quite want that from a cartoon villain.
Yeah, that's exactly what you want. And I find it interesting that you picked a superhero film, which is obviously something that's much more widely regarded nowadays. Like, obviously, like, there weren't really superhero films like that at the time. But the superhero genre in general is, I think sequels tend to work better than that, because normally you're dealing with these established IPs, characters that have been around for years, characters that everyone's grown up with. So generally, we know where Superman came from. We know, came down from space, got a job, working as a reporter, no one recognised him with his glasses on, like. So, like, your first superhero film, if it's going to be an origin story, often you're retelling something that's been very well established.
Yeah, and I think as well as you've got, with these, let's say the last 10 years, last 15 years, your X-Men's, your Icemen, your whatever else, Iron Men, you know, it's Iceman. Iceman.
There was an Iceman.
I think Silver Surfer I was thinking of.
There was an Iceman, X-Men, I think. I don't know, superheroes ain't really
X-Men, Iron Man, wrong element.
Yeah.
And I think all of those, and there is something to be garnered from all of them, and they're a great televisual or cinematic watch. But I don't know how much of a separate entity each one is, how distinct they are from each other. And I have a real problem that I know they're from the same realm, from the same world, but I just think sometimes, I mean, you need a film to be distinct. You need to have some kind of separate identity, and it troubles me with a lot of these films that they're just more of the same. But I don't think I can say the same thing about when it was Superman 2, which is because it was. the first Superman with Christopher Reeve was the origin story, and you know, they really went to town with Marlon Brando and Susanna York and his mum and dad and stuff. But once you got to Superman 2, it was the first time you saw an actual Superman story, the established Superman figure.
Which is what you want from, because the thing is, as I say, these IPs, like the comics histories, they've been running for years, and like, you don't need to give them a new origin story like every time. Like, you just want to see Superman doing Superman shit.
Exactly, and the other thing as well with Superman 2 is, I love not only General Zod, but of course Gene Hackman, who is just the best ever.
Yes.
And he plays that role with such aplomb. He's so villainous and shifty, and you know, plays it slightly for laughs. Again, fully aware that you're talking about a comic character, and sort of realizing that, visualizing a comic. And it's so interesting to see him pull something out like that. I mean, I wouldn't have really thought of him for that part, but what brilliant casting that was to have him in that role as a villain, and also kind of an interesting foil against you know, our hero, who, you know, Christopher Reeve played that Superman role. It was quite a difficult role, I feel. It was to play the straight man, you know, if you're talking about double acts, or, you know, two people interacting, he had to play that quite sort of, you know, downplayed, and I think, and you don't realise how well he did that, I don't think, until you look back at it, and because he could have been so big and hammy, and it's just not like that at all. He's really subtle, underplays it all, and he actually allows someone like Gene Hackman to go big, and you don't normally see Gene Hackman go big. What you see in Gene Hackman is his ability to communicate passion or an emotion and really express it, but he himself is never that big. It's just the passion behind the thing that he's expressing is what makes him so great.
He communicates it really well.
Yeah, and it's got an absolutely outrageous plot. Just ridiculous things happen. But I just think this, at the end of the day, you got this film, and I remember there was even like a Saturday morning kids TV show, and they brought all the baddies on to interview them. And my heart was in my mouth. I was just so excited. And they played the clip where Lois Lane falls into the water at this, it's like I don't know, it's near Niagara Falls or whatever. And you're like, oh, what's he going to do? Well, you know he's going to change out of being Clark Kent and become Superman. But just seeing that little clip, and I just thought, oh, that's amazing. And I was living it. I was absolutely living that film.
Amazing.
And the thing is, now, you're talking about a 40-year-old film. And you look back at it, and in a lot of ways, it has dated. But that's not why I like the film. It's not because it still stands the test of time. It's because of what it did at that time for me, and actually and reinforced my belief in film and wanting to go to the cinema and making sure that I was a cinephile in life rather than something else. You know. So that's my first. That's my first nomination.
That was a great one to kick off with. I'm going to go with one that's often maligned by people who haven't really given it a fair shot, but it's certainly a film that does one. I am going to go for Psycho 2. Yes. See, now this is an interesting one. The thing about Psycho 2 is that they really struggled to find someone who was willing to take the project on.
Yeah.
Because at this point, like Hitchcock, well, the first Psycho, certainly one of the most iconic films of all time.
Yeah.
And particularly one of the most influential films of all time. And like at this time, there hadn't been many like superstar auteurs other than that. So like the reverence which Hitchcock still has today is immense. But at this time, no one wanted to follow Hitchcock, particularly 20 years later in the 80s. You know, like that, like a lot of the films that have been made since have been following that kind of format, dealing with a killer, a mystery, the misdirection, the setups, and all this had been repeated so often that the innovation of Psycho had almost become cliche in places. But yeah, Richard Franklin did take Psycho 2 on, and I got to say, as I say, Psycho, most iconic film of all time, one of the most influential films of all time. But Psycho 2, if I'm going to watch a Psycho film, that's the one I'm reaching for.
Right. What is there any particular part of it that impresses you most?
The thing that impresses me most about it is the logical thing to do when you're dealing with a sequel to something where someone's a killer, where there's been a mystery, it's been revealed, is you just take that killer and he just does some more killing. That's the logical way to follow on. But it sets you up in a way where, from the offset, you're rooting for Norman. You're rooting for the guy who, the last time we saw him, was cuddling his dead mum's severed hand. You know, he does appear to got better. You are rooting for him. Like, I was listening to an interview with Quentin Tarantino and Eli Roth, and that they had a similar kind of take on it. And one of the most incredible things about the film is that it manages to keep you guessing when you already know that one of the characters is a psychotic murderer. That's wild. That's an incredible achievement. And they've done a lot of work in it. There's more of an additional cast to this one, whereas the other one was more of a mystery and a character study. You know, there's the misdirection with Janet Leigh in the original, obviously. But this one, like, introduces more characters, and it deals with issues like that are rarely even addressed today, like for someone who's like spent 20 years in mental health care and is released back into the community. How does the community react to that? That's a really big issue for a mystery thriller horror film to be dealing with, and it's not something you get addressed, like, because obviously people are kind of looking at him sideways, but part of his rehabilitation is he's given a job in this cafe, which puts him directly in front of and in constant contact with people who are in that community.
Well, I think it's interesting that you picked that because the thing I get from Psycho 2 is, and you said it right at the start there, is that you're talking about, let's say, 20 years later. I mean, and you're also following Hitchcock. And I think that the film is pretty honest about the fact that it's not directed by Hitchcock. It knows it's not directed, and so it can't ever be a Hitchcockian movie. And also, like you say, the 80s, it knows that it has to even allow itself to be that 80s style, or acknowledge that we are in the 80s now. Yeah. And so you've got that passage of time, and it almost felt quite natural. It's like the logical thing. It's almost better that they didn't try and make a Hitchcockian film with it, that they did try and follow more the style of the day with it, and not try and beat Hitchcock or try and match him, and just do something which is, I thought was fairly honest, and I actually agree with you. It's a good little film, that, and I probably wouldn't have thought of that one myself, and it has been a little while since I've seen it, but I remember I did a night, and I did all the Psycho films. Anyone that has a reference to Psycho is in the Psycho series or is influenced by Psycho, and we did this cinema night, and I do like there's certain things about Psycho 2 that I think I actually prefer to watching Hitchcock's original, and it's not just the fact that, you know, we're talking about a 60s black and white film, and it is brilliant, but Psycho 2, I was really impressed by how much they kind of made their own movie out of the idea, and as you say, it's like treating the subject material with a certain respect, because I mean, obviously at the end of the day, we're still talking about, like you say, a knife wielding maniac who denies it all, and is he? Isn't he? Well, he is. He is really, isn't he? He is. So, but yeah, great.
But initially, he isn't.
Reformed.
Some people want to interfere, and it's the interference that's the problem. It's the outside forces. Norman would have been all right. Everything would have been all right, but other factors like greed, all this, it all plays into it. Hang on, I'm just rolling my little background footage here again. But yeah, I think it's fascinating to, like, bring back a killer and then make us feel sympathy for him.
Yeah. Well, this it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, and I suppose it almost touches on the Superman point I was making before, which is sometimes the lead role is boring.
Yeah.
You know, it's necessary. You do have to have the straight with the crooked, and
there needs to be that contrast.
Yeah. So the fact that we hear our lead unusually is not your classic straight man, your classic sort of lead role man. Your Laurence Olivier or your Ray Fiennes, straight out of drama school, or fresh faced and smartly suited or something like that. You know, it's no Gregory Peck. It's it's Jimmy Stewart.
Anthony Hopkins did have like quite a classical acting background, but he just played the character of Norman Bates so well, just embodied it to the point that that's what we see in him. Like, but he's like a trained dancer and all these things.
Well, I think he was so good at it that really there was nothing else he could do, was there? That was all he was left with. And there's nothing wrong with that. I maintain that in life, the great actors, I mean, there's 99.99% of actors, probably even higher percentage than that, have one character. The chameleons, your Daniel Day-Lewis's, are very few and far between, and in fact, probably less than a handful of people if we wanted to go there. Robert De Niro, perhaps, and that's about it. If we're talking about any other actor, as a general rule, they have one character to play, and if they can nail that character, if they can find that character, the one they're supposed to play, I think there's no shame in playing that character for the entire rest of your life. Look at Hugh Grant, for example.
Yeah. He's been doing the same bit since Lair of the White Worm.
And I just think, so for Anthony Perkins to have this role, or another one, Peter Falk. And it's just one more thing. Just one more question before.
Danny DeVito, I'd certainly throw into that kind of category.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and it's interesting where he pops up as well over the years, isn't it? But absolutely, he's got his one little dynamo character, and he's stuck with it, and served him well, I think.
Does it better than anyone.
Yeah, so I think again, it gave Psycho 2 gave us a platform for Anthony Perkins' great character, which you just despise him, you really do, but you keep watching, don't you? You really don't like him. He's really hot and nasty, and it's like, how does this guy get by? And it just makes you feel uncomfortable. The thing is that it doesn't.
I think the thing that Psycho 2 does is really force you to deal with the fact that that there's no malice motivating him. It is a mental health problem beyond his control.
Yeah. Well,
it's previous trauma, and
it's that thing, isn't it? When they say that the mad people don't know they are mad, and he although he's been given treatment or whatever, rehabilitated.
He's accepted it, but now it's hanging over his head.
He doesn't really believe it, though. He doesn't really believe, he doesn't really believe he ever really had a problem. It's absolutely logical in his mind the way that he is.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's Psycho 2, so would you like to sling over another one for number 4?
I'm just leaning forward here. I'm looking at my list, because I did have a kind of order, but now we're talking about it. I think I want to maybe change the order in which I give them to you. So let's, I'll go for probably the most recent one on my list.
Yeah.
It's probably the only modern film I've got on my list, and that is Jurassic World.
Well, all right then. Jurassic World. That was the first one of the new generation.
It's where they've got the they got the theme park off on the island. Yeah. And what's her name? Bryce Dallas Howard, who's just great. She's a real scene stealer, really natural. And of course, Chris Pratt, who's growing on me as the films pile up that he's in. Yeah, so to establish this, Jurassic Park, the original, great, changed cinema forever, justified the use of CGI throughout a movie without it losing too much.
And I think CGI that still stands up, which a lot of CGI doesn't.
Yeah. Oh, I think even now Jurassic Park looks a little creaky, but you go with it because it's good. It's a good story and it's a nice movie, and I think I could have, if it was a sequel, I could have picked the original, but I'm not picking the next 2 or 3 that went after it, because I just don't think they hit the mark. I feel like they're all slightly broken movies, but we knew that we wanted more from this world of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
And the film that, you know,
there was quite a big time gap between the follow-ups to the original and Jurassic World. I believe, I've heard the term legacy sequels flying around a lot lately, and that's when like a direct sequel returns the original IP after longer than a decade or something. And it's interesting. I think Jurassic World did that particularly well. Like one of my favourite touches from Jurassic World was the guy in the control room who like collects crap from the original park. And like, because their stuff's so high tech, it kind of makes the original Jurassic Park movie and the setup and the park there just look really, really shonky. And you're like, well, of course this failed. Like, and like, because they're that much more high tech and everything's that much safer, they put that much more development into it, that much care, that much safety. It does make sense that they would be operating Jurassic World. Obviously, though, things have to go wrong or we're going to have a very boring movie.
That's right, that's true. And I think the other thing about it is, I think it's an interesting idea, is after Jurassic Park, the original, once everything went wrong, they should have left Jurassic Park alone. And then we've got the next couple of sequels where I feel we're reigniting the whole Jurassic Park thing because the initial was so popular. The reason why I like Jurassic World is because it's the correct sequel at the correct time when mankind never learns its lesson. If Jurassic Park, the original, this is my theory anyway, if Jurassic Park had actually happened and then died on its arse, and then we would have left that island alone for a while, let's say 20, 25 years, and human beings being absolute idiots, being quite greedy, this would have been about the time when we would have cranked it up again and forgotten all the lessons of why it was Jurassic Park closed down. And so that part of it, I quite like the idea that, you know, once again, human failings lead to this situation, which is great to watch.
But those who don't learn from the mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat them, but not necessarily in the next year by the same people. And they're going, and like some of the setups for like those early sequels are pretty ridiculous. It's all like stuff like Sam Neill's forgot his keys, like.
Exactly, this is what I mean. They were too soon, but obviously you can understand why they got made, because they want to make money out of films and get people into cinemas. But the Jurassic World, I think they had it just right, got the balance just right. It was a comeback for Jurassic Park itself. It was a comeback within the movie of Jurassic Park coming back. They like you say, there's certain motifs in the film that they're from the original that they play with. The CGI is just incredible. And not only do we get our old favourite Tyrannosaurus Rex, but we get this new twitchy, twitchy, edgy sort of T-Rex plus.
That's exactly how it'd go down. Like flipping you. If Jurassic Park was real, you would have Elon Musk trying to develop a new, better T-Rex and ends up giving it anxiety.
Yeah. It's the millennial T-Rex.
Oh, yeah.
But so I think there's something about the
Generation X.
There's these some of the performances in it, I think, are really good. Really, just again, they know that they're in a sequel. And they're just running with it, and they're just going with it, and they're just making an entertaining piece of film, because they know that you can never ever again have Jurassic Park the original. So what can you do? And I think that Jurassic World is the best attempt at trying to recreate or sequelize the Jurassic Park film.
I fully agree with that. Fair dues.
Nice one.
Well, if you're done there, I'm going to go on to my number 4, which is where we start going really off-piece, because I'm going for Scanners 3, The Takeover.
Wow.
From 1993. Yes.
Well, you're going to have to be doing the talking on this one then.
Oh, yeah. This one, it's going to need some justification, because a lot of people aren't so familiar with it. In fact, I'm only aware of one other fan. Shout out Dylan, King Cannibal, House of Black Lanterns. Absolute legend. Also a very big fan of this movie.
All right, Dylan.
Yeah. first thing, we're going to talk about the original Scanners.
Yeah.
Now, Scanners, it's an iconic film.
Yeah.
There's a lot of support for it, but I don't think it is a top 10 Cronenberg film. I think there's at least 10 more Cronenberg films that I'd rather watch.
Right.
Be it something more on a body horror tip, like his early Rabid stuff, or The Brood, or something like that.
Yeah,
if it's something a bit more bigger and commercial, like The Fly, or more recent and serious, like Eastern Promises, I think Scanners is pretty low down the list, because, like, this is the peak of his, like, body horror crazy stuff. And the most iconic part of Scanners is the head explosion.
Yeah.
That's in like the first 5 minutes. And then we've got to deal with all the spy espionage stuff. And this is coming, this was released maybe a year or so after The Fury, which covers a very similar area and also features head explosions in this.
Yeah. Well, so, let's just talk about, keep it on Scanners for a moment, if we can. I mean, I felt that film was so iconic of the genre, or newly emerging sort of 80s schlock horror genre, that and Cronenberg really stood out with that film, and it really is, and I feel like it had a certain credibility which many of the other films didn't. You just knew straight away they were, you know, it could have been good, but there was something about Scanners that had a real credibility, of a real cachet.
I think it was because it was essentially an espionage film that had psychics and ephemeral and exploded heads. Like, but at its core, it's a spy movie, effectively.
Yeah, the way in which people, it's that psychological pressure that people are under, and Cronenberg's ability to kind of show that. It's almost like a paranoia, but maybe that's too strong a word. But
he did incredibly well with that. But it is a flawed movie. There's no kung fu. There's no tits. There's no amazing sequence set in a Christmas party for Scanners.
Yeah, it's rubbish, isn't it? What a rubbish film that is.
Yeah, but, you know, all these things are missing, but we get them in Scanners 3. Yes, we do. Like, now, the Scanners sequels came about in the 90s, and it was by the Canadian company that owned the property. Cronenberg didn't return to the property. They had Scanners 2, which I think they were direct-to-video in a lot of territories. They had Scanners 2, which was trying to do the same kind of thing as the first one. Obviously, doesn't work as well at all, because you try and do Cronenberg stuff and you're not Cronenberg. By 3, they say, right, fuck it, I don't care. We're going completely off-piece. We're going to have a sexy Polish scanner, and she can control people on the TV and make them try and shag each other on live television. And we're going to have a guy who, like, accidentally makes someone fly out of a window, a skyscraper, during a Christmas party, then retreats to train with Shaolin monks to master the art of Zen, so he doesn't make people explode by accident. And
so would you say then that the reason you're liking this film is not only because of those certain things that you're listing then, but also because you've got a film here which has got new ideas?
Very much so, very much so. Like, trying to repeat what they were doing from the original Scanners with Scanners 2, disaster. Scanners 3, fuck it, in the kit, it's all going there. More monks, more Shaolin, more Kung Fu. I'd like, which ultimately is, if you're going to be cheap, if you're on lower budget, if you go with direct-to-video, if you're going to, like, naturally be schlocky, then embrace it. And I love a bit of schlock, me.
Yeah. So, and again, I suppose this is touching on what I was saying earlier about why it is that a sequel is a good sequel for you. You know, because it's not necessarily the quality of the film. You know, you could hardly say Scanners 3 is going to be up there, and up there with the great movies of the age. It's not, but for you, it's a personal thing, isn't it? There's things about that film that just capture you.
Yeah.
There's the ideas in there. There's something in there that intrigues, and as you say as well, goes all out, and is unashamed in its way of touching all the bases, pressing all the buttons.
This is it. Like, if you go into Scanners 3 expecting a faithful follow-up, to a Cronenberg film. You're not going to get that, and you're going to be disappointed, which I think is why it's taken so much of a hit over the year. Essentially, you're dealing with a different approach to the IP. It's a difference between Joel Schumacher's Batman and Robin and like the Dark Knight. Like you're effectively two very different sides of the same IP. So
just on an aside there, just out of interest, which would you say is a better film, Batman Forever or Batman and Robin?
The one with the nipples on the suit.
Well, they certainly had nipples on the Batman Forever Robin outfit, I seem to remember, which I have tried on. I have actually...
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Hang on,
yes,
we're going to have to divert
and I've also tried on Jim Carrey's Riddler outfit from that movie as well. I confess, at the time, in 1995, when Batman Forever came out, I was doing some work for Warner Brothers, and they were going to be doing a promotion at their studio store on Regent Street, and the costumes were part of the promotion, and they'd been flown over from Hollywood, and then they came to the Warner Brothers offices, and they had to be kept under lock and key for about 3 hours whilst they were sorting out something on the other side in the store. So they needed someone to look after this stuff for 3 hours in a locked room. So I'm sat there, so what else are you going to do? When?
Of course.
So
you're at least going to see if the pectoral sections line up with your actual nipples.
Yeah.
Do your nipples match Chris O'Donnell's?
I had no beer belly anymore. I had huge pecs. I had broad shoulders for the first time in my life. And what was interesting is because there was a Polaroid camera in this room, and the girl who was working in the office as well at the time, Claire, who was actually very prim and proper, and at first she was so shocked at the idea of me trying this stuff on, and then after about an hour she softened a bit, and then she, by the end, she had the Polaroid camera out and was taking photos. And what was amazing was how even on a Polaroid camera, how great I looked, the reflections, the contours, and I looked really amazing. Well, I looked good in the Robin outfit, but then you still got my sort of pasty pale blue face atop this hench body, but when I put the Riddler outfit on, now that's my kind of outfit, skin tight, luminous green, and again, when you flash a camera on it, put lighting on it, the lighting and reflection it gave off was just amazing.
These kind of things are big considerations, like, you know, it's not just a costume. It's got to really pop on camera.
Yeah, and I absolutely had it, so I feel privileged that I got that little time to dress up campus Christmas for what is one of the campus Batman movies. Excellent
stuff. Well, I've got nothing further to say on Scanners 3 that could top that. So shall we step on to number 3?
Okay. Well, I'm going to go back a little further back. I'm going to go for French Connection 2.
Ooh. Yes.
So
Gene Hackman featuring Heavy.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think one of his tour de forces. The French Connection itself, I think what William Friedkin, who of course did Exorcist and that kind of thing, and it made a really amazing film with the original, and it was so, like, almost like a new kind of documentary style, and it was so raw, and the acting was so good, and it couldn't finish there. You had to have a sequel, and rightly, the French Connection 2 carries on where French Connection left off, and it goes back to that thing that I said earlier about how the good thing with sequels is that you've got all the setup out of the way, you can just launch straight into the action, and that's what French Connection 2 does, goes straight to it. And the thing I love about it as well is because, of course, at the end of French Connection, Popeye, his character, doesn't get the baddie, doesn't win. Yeah. He watches him sail off into the sunset, and he's lost. So this is a revenge tale, and he's got to get him now, and he's prepared to die for it. He's that obsessed by this guy who's got away literally with murder in some cases, and I just love that film, and it was also the first time I'd seen, there's a scene, for example, where they pump him up full of drugs and then make him go through cold turkey as a form of torture.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I recall seeing a director using the direction to aid the effect of the cold turkey. And the camera work is juddery and lots of quick, fast edits, and it you know says something about his state of mind, and
sort of illustrates the sort of the anxiety side of it.
Yeah, it makes it's less comfortable to even watch it. It's not watching it is not even that good a thing to do. But I remember even at the time when I first saw it, I was like, I don't enjoy watching this, and then now I see why that is because it's a deliberate thing to make you feel uncomfortable. He's trying to make you feel ill with Popeye Doyle, yeah. and there's that whole world. There's a certain world on a certain time that it captures, and it's I know a lot of the action is taking place in the south of France. But for me, that sort of period of New York in the 70s when the place nearly went bankrupt is such a fascinating period because
during the garbage strikes and
you've got
dirty, filthy place.
And it just happens. Coincided with what I think is the greatest period of film or film experimentation, which was the 70s, primarily all the 70s, pretty much. But that period of New York, and I even apply that to, we saw the birth of hip hop come out of that bankruptcy of New York, that trouble, the wasteland, but and that gave rise to so much beauty and art and film and these angry, interesting to watch characters that we see in French Connection 2, and it's without that sort of wasteland of a city and then its eventual rebirth. But this is obviously at the lowest point. There's so much we wouldn't even have today, and to watch anything from that period as well, I just think so interesting to watch.
It's almost a cliche to say that the city is a character. But it really is. Like, if you like, so many films like that set there, from like Scorsese's Taxi Driver to something like Basket Case.
And it's interesting how even I know the recent one, The Irishman, the Scorsese, The Irishman, and he used some of the stock footage, the second unit stuff from Taxi Driver. So literally, he'd been driving around New York at night in the 70s, filming Times Square and the seedier side, just streets and the traffic, and apparently he filmed hours and hours of this stuff, and he used some in the film. In Taxi Driver, but most of it had just been sat on a shelf. And then when they need to do those scenes in The Irishman set in the 70s, there he was able to pull out this unused. He shot himself almost like brand new, and it was authentic.
That's the thing. If it's shot on film and it's been carefully kept, it could be restored to, and anything could be restored to current standards. Like if you've got the negatives there, like Scorsese's archive, what a beast of a thing to have.
Can you imagine you've got some right pearls in there?
So
and French Connection.
Do you reckon he's got some sex tapes in there? He must have. There is no way that he hasn't at least like fucking filmed himself
in a taxi.
So a lady of the night, so to speak. Flipping Martin Scorsese has probably got 1970s sex tapes of himself, like in this archive, like,
and others. Bet you got a few others there. Then there's all types in there. There'd be all types in there.
Defo.
Anything went in the 70s, didn't it? I think.
Fully.
So for me, French Connection 2, because it was the film that French Connection should have been, had it not been for this awful thing called the setup of movies. So what was great about French Connection 2 is it just went straight to the action. You got your revenge story. You got brilliant acting, brilliant directing, experimental directing, just so interesting what he was doing, and the characters felt so authentic, and it's always stuck with me. So yeah, so that's my whatever we're up to. That's my next one.
Yeah, okay. So that's number 3, French Connection 2. So now we'll go for my number 3, which is A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
See, now this one is, a lot of people consider this to be the best Elm Street film, including myself. I mean, Freddy himself went through a lot of evolutions and changes, so people tend to have their favourite Freddy. And to me, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is the one where they got it spectacularly right. And I also think it was kind of like the last time Freddy was really scary, and it's also where the jokes come in. Like, I do have some theories. People talk about the evolution of this character.
Yeah.
I don't think it's such an evolution. I don't subscribe to the theory that he changed through the 80s. I think the change happened very, very suddenly during work on the promotion of Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors.
Right.
See, there was a film there was a song which is on the end titles and was released to MTV to promote it by the heavy metal band Dokken, called Dream Warriors. Right. And in the video for it, Robert Englund appeared as Freddy Krueger. And
oh yes, I recall. Can I just say at this point, when I think about the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, or rather the sequels, I think you might be onto a winner here. I think you might be onto the correct one to pick. As
And here is my thing, because the thing is, Dokken, being a heavy metal band, now this is documented, they brought a lot of beat to the set, and Robert Englund was partying for this 4-day video shoot in character. He apparently, according to reports, he was basically serving everyone up fat bumps off the claws, as you would do, and like doing little puns like "never sleep again," all this kind of thing. So, I think if you spend 4 days dressed as Freddy Krueger in Freddy Krueger character, shelving fish scale cocaine, I think that's going to have a permanent effect on how he plays the character. And you can see it because he's bringing in the one-liners in Nightmare on Elm Street 3, the "welcome to prime time, bitch," and all this. These start coming in, but he's still like the scary, intimidating character. Whereas after that, like, even when they try to do a dark film like Nightmare on Elm Street 5, every time Freddy appears, it's like, "It's a boy!" I mean, that is 100% related to shelving kilos and kilos of beak over 4 days.
And let's be honest as well, essentially the 80s film world was just one big line of cocaine, wasn't it?
That's it. I mean, like, if you look at how the character changed, basically he wouldn't shut up anymore, and he kept telling shit jokes, completely unaware of how shit they were.
It's in the
I have
realm
seen
of Arnie,
these symptoms elsewhere in nature, like, and I know what causes them. It's a boy. It's a bump. It's an eighth. You know, yeah. So yeah. I think that's where the shift happened for me. Like, I think from Nightmare on Elm Street 4 onwards, we do get Cocaine Freddy.
Yeah, it's like it's basically like the Arnold Schwarzenegger of the horror world, really, isn't it? You know, with the catchphrases. I mean, I remember that. You know, there's the Freddy catchphrases suddenly arriving, just like Arnie was getting his. There's a parallel there, I think, definitely.
Yeah. It was around a similar kind of time. But pulling it back to the film itself, what makes it so great? I remember seeing this, like, it was the first one I managed to obtain on VHS as a kid. I think I was like in my last year of primary school or something, and like, so incredible. Some of the imagery in it's iconic, particularly the kill of the puppet kid. Where like there's a stop motion animation, like, which is incredible. I'm a big fan of stop motion when it's done well, and it's done really well here. And like the image of him sleepwalking, but like it had cut to the dream as it shows his veins coming out there.
Yeah, that's right.
I say it haunts me to this day. I only watched it 2 days ago, so it's going to be fresh, but it's always been fresh. The imagery is iconic. This is the one where Freddy Krueger was executed perfectly. And, well, we've got a great cast in it. We've got likeable characters, which is a very often, like, because the thing is, generally with slasher movies, the teenagers are just there to be killed. So, like, it's often overlooked making them likeable. But when they are likeable, we're more invested. We've got people like Patricia Arquette in this. We've got
right, yeah.
We've got Lawrence Fishburne back when he was known as Larry Fishburne.
Larry Fishburne.
This film set off a lot. It's the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise has launched a fair few careers. I believe the original contained the debut of Johnny Depp.
That's right.
Yeah.
And just on an aside, and I know I'm probably going to name drop again, but I actually met Larry Fishburne once.
Yeah.
And I was
Tell me about this.
Well, I was working. Let me just say for the record, I love Lawrence Fishburne. I think he is great, and it's not just.
I like how this is starting with a disclaimer. All the best stories require disclaimers,
and it's not just that. It's the films he's been in. Not necessarily just about him, but the films he's been in have been films that have really meant something to me as well over the years. So I have real respect for him, not just as an actor, but also because of the projects that he's been involved in. And I've always thought he's one of the good guys as well. He's like, there's definitely something about him that's quite humble. Real humility and I love watching any as soon as you say Lawrence Fishburne's in something, I'll watch it. That's the end of it, really. So he is one of my heroes, my acting heroes. And I was I was working in a theatre in the West End, the Aldwych Theatre. And there was a show on, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and it was David Suchet and Diana Rigg, two-hander. And it was heavy
cast there.
Yeah, but what happened was that a lot of famous people came to see the performance, and then what would happen is we'd be asked to take them around to the backstage area and go and meet David Suchet and Diana Rigg. Often these stars would be absolutely blown away by the performance and wanted to just pop their head round and say hello. So and interestingly, I met Sidney Poitier as well. I was actually with him for about 20 minutes until we could get into the dressing rooms to say hello to all the cast. I met Larry Fishburne there. He watched the show and I was with him. But the thing was, is because I was working there, and I still had a job to do, which was part of the job was to sell the ice creams. So while I'm sat with him, I'm sat there with a whole thing of ice creams, and he said, can I have an ice cream? and I got the ice. I got him a strawberry mibby, I think it was, and I gave him the strawberry mibby, and I just handed it to him. And he's like that. He goes, how much do I owe you? And there were £2. And I went, don't worry about it, man. You can have it. And he's like, no. And I went, no, mate, you can have it. And he goes, no, I'll pay you. And I went, no, you don't have to. I said, look, I'll tell you what. I said, let me buy you an ice cream. Yeah. And he goes, no. He's, oh man, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I said, yeah, I can. I said, look, mate, I said, just from my personal perspective, regardless of this, being a theatre business and having to sell ice creams, you have given me joy in my life. You've given me joy. And I said, for me, this is something for me. This is a good thing for me. I said, I'll happily spend £2 on an ice cream for you. And it's, and I'm sure you're very rich and can afford £2 for an ice cream. I said, but really, let me buy you an ice cream. And he went, no, man, I can't do that. I can't. Jeez. And he's like that. And he starts fiddling around in his pockets and he can't even find £2 like this. And I'm like, mate, honestly, it's all right. It's all right. And he goes, no, man, no, I've got to give you the money. And then eventually he's like this. And then
you've committed to the bit of looking in your pockets.
Yeah. And he pulls out £4 and he gives me £4. And I'm like, you don't have to give me £4. I only want £2. And in fact, I don't even want the £2. And he's like, just tell you what, there's your £2 for the ice cream.
Tipping an ice cream vendor.
Yeah. And then in the end, I was having an argument with him over ice cream. So, but yeah, he was a nice guy. And then it took him in to meet Diana Rigg first, I think it was. And God, wow, what a character she was. But anyway, that's for another day. Where were we?
Okay, I think it's time for your number 2.
Okay. Oh, now you see, now the problem we've got here
Okay, well, should we say that our lists are non-definitive?
Yeah, okay.
We made it.
Well, we're now heading into the realms of what would be a top 5 or a top 7. So, how many have I done so far? 3.
Yeah.
Right. So, right. Okay. I'm gonna
the
take.
decision's getting tough now.
I'm gonna take a punt.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say this one, and let's see what you think to my choice. Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Well, all right, yes.
And I remember when it came out in '96, I think it was. And I mean, obviously, Die Hard, the first one, nothing need be said.
Yeah.
The second one, people rate it. I don't. I think
it's trying to repeat the story beats.
Yeah, well, it's, this kind of hold up in an airport. It just didn't work for me, and I found the film. I mean, there were a couple of impressive parts. It just wasn't the one for me. It just wasn't the one. And I can't really put my finger on what it was about it. So when they announced that they were doing this third one, Die Hard with a Vengeance, I had a slightly heavy heart because I thought, do you know what? This is going to be shite, isn't it? It's going to be absolute bobbins. And then I went to the cinema to see it, and from the first scene, essentially, where we're seeing him bundled off in the middle of Harlem wearing 2 sandwich boards saying I hate the N-word.
We're not saying that. I believe
I won't ever be saying that, but as a concept, how ballsy was that, and what an opener.
Insanity out the gate, like.
Exactly. And then of course you have Jeremy Irons.
Immediately sets up a great relationship in the
and it's Jeremy Irons as your classic movie villain, and it's just great. And it keeps it sharp, it keeps moving. They've even got it, everything's on a timer, isn't it? You've got to get to this point in New York by now or the bomb goes off. And they run that same premise 4 or 5 times, and that could have just been the film and then finally get him in the end. But no, it turns out that all of it was an irrelevance. All of it, and it wasn't the true, what the actual film was actually about. The kicker was it didn't matter. It wasn't just a Jeremy Irons' revenge for killing his brother. But it was actually it was because it's a heist movie. Yeah, and I love the way it twists and turns, and certainly that twist is great. And then just the whole idea of playing with that Simon Says and doing the little quizzes. Like, remember, there's one time when they get to a park and they've got to kind of weigh out the water and the different measures, otherwise bomb goes off. And I was with a mate in the cinema, and I remember him going, How are you gonna do that? And that's impossible. And I kind of, I don't know, this kind of thing that works with my brain, but it just straight away went, you put that there, you pour that into there, then you pour that into there, then you pour that to there, and then that means you've got X amount, and then you can just pour that to there, and and he's like, oh yeah, and I just got it straight away. But I'm just so involved in it, and of course Bruce Willis playing Bruce Willis in that period where he was still the Bruce Willis character before it became a sort of hackneyed cliche of himself. But just great style across the board. Yeah.
Interesting thing about Die Hard with a Vengeance is the first draft of the script, the first version of the script that was sold to the studio was not a Die Hard movie. It was a script that they bought and retooled to a Die Hard movie.
Well.
See, now, this is something that's often said, like, oh, this is how you end up with a rubbish sequel. People point to some of the later Hellraisers and things like that. It's like rewriting a script to become a sequel is considered a bad thing. But I think particularly in the case of Die Hard with a Vengeance, it works spectacularly well by, like, taking this character that we're familiar with, and, like, so that's one less origin story we got to deal with, and then throwing it into this incredibly well-plotted crime, heist, thriller, caper movie.
Yeah.
A buddy movie, like is the relationship between him and Samuel L. Jackson is.
Well, this is it. That's the other thing, because of course we had Pulp Fiction in '94, and which instantly propelled Samuel L. Jackson to megastardom. I know there were
very much his purple patch, like around this time.
And I think by '96, I was definitely interested to see what else we could get out of Samuel L. Jackson. And here we have him playing a character who isn't but a hard nut, isn't a psychopath. He's just a decent man, and it happens to be caught in the middle of the fray. And for example, the bit where at the start where there's an explosion out the side of a building and cars that are just driving along get absolutely battered. That was so shocking, that explosion. Yeah, it was done so well. It was done so well, and it really disturbing. It really felt like an act of terror. Quite prescient in a way, I suppose. But it's for New York, and just something about it, just the immediacy of that film, and yes, as you say, with the buddy, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was Shane Black who wrote it, who
from Predator,
and Kiss Bang Bang, if you know that film. That's just so.
He's the one who's really good at like bloke movies.
And the cop buddy type thing, and I think this is one of his best.
Writing male relationships is. It's something that a lot of people can't really do well.
Yeah.
But Shane Black, he nails it, man. He nails it. Like he manages to create male characters that are masculine and sympathetic. You don't have to see Arnold Schwarzenegger like looking at some divorce papers and crying at a picture of his ex-wife in the wallet in Predator for you to get on board with him. He could just be a badass and still be a relatable, likable character. It's not easy to do. But Shane Black, he can get that formula down. Yeah,
and I do think it's one of the best. I mean, obviously, Die Hard will be his best work in that sense when we're talking about Die Hard as the franchise. But I really, really like Die Hard with a Vengeance. It's got a real magic to it, and it actually has, and I'll say the word again, an immediacy to it that the first one doesn't have. The first one is much more of a rounded, blended piece, whereas it really felt like with Die Hard with a Vengeance, you're on the street in New York, and it felt really personal and up front and up close, and you feel real vulnerability, and when you're watching it, and you do absolutely root for those characters, and it just keeps on moving, and as I say, you got the device, everything on a timer. It's just the best idea.
Yeah, it really flips the Die Hard premise, because after Die Hard, there was a lot of movies that were trying to be Die Hard on a train, Die Hard on a bus. It was like get the characters into this space and do that, and like Die Hard with a Vengeance goes the complete opposite way and opens it up across the whole of New York City.
Yeah. And as I say, I love watching New York City anyway.
Yeah,
as a character,
just from the opening, like the opening theme tune with Summer in the City blasting out. Yeah. So it really feels like it. Really feels like you're there. You're there. You're feeling the heat. You're dealing with it. Whereas the previous movies were Christmas movies, like.
And of course, it was directed by I think it was Rennie Harlin who directed it. So of course, I really like his work and how he manages to go big. Really everything's cityscapes, not just the city, a cityscape. You just see this huge realm which he manages to create, and he does it again in that. I'm thinking of things like Cutthroat Island.
See, like Rennie Harlin for me is quite hit and miss, but he has this thing he does, and when he gets it right, he gets it right. And this is an example of getting it spectacularly right.
See, I don't really think he's hit and miss.
I
think he's great.
I'm just going to double check something because I'm not. Hang on, sorry, I've got to do a quick bit of Googling there, so keep talking.
I think the thing about Rennie Harlin is he's very Hollywood, and the thing of he
directed Die Hard 2.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
well,
John McTiernan directed Die Hard 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought it was Rennie Harlin. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's interesting then. Okay.
Yeah,
well, I'll take it all back.
I was thinking if Rennie Harlin did direct Die Hard 3, then that's his best film.
I'll take it back then. I'll take it back. But I still love Die Hard 3. I think, and John McTiernan is great. I mean, it really, what a great director he is. And there's I think there's something about There's also the colours in that film as well. There's kind of it's the reds and the greens and it all sort of stands out in Die Hard with a Vengeance. It I feel so like
there's
grainy.
There's a great colour palette to it, like
there's and
like action films like are such a visual thing. Like it's literally all visual. So.
Yeah,
like,
normally they're a bit dark and moody, aren't they? You know,
like,
they're a bit dark and moody often. You know, an action movie, you know, or it's in the rain or the gloom or whatever.
Yeah, here, sometimes it's just a bit dark to cover up a bit of to hide a bit of like hide a few of the strings behind the scenes. And all this kind of thing.
This is hot, sweaty, and humid, and you just pick that up.
You can taste the fumes of the cars.
So that's my second from the top.
Okay, well I'm gonna go for an absolute wild selection here. A wild film, but I don't think a wild selection because I think it is one of the greatest sequels of all time. I'm going for Gremlins 2, The New Batch.
Oh, brilliant. I'm going to give that a small round of applause for a choice. And can I just say, before you launch into as to why, I nearly picked that as well and didn't. We'll discuss that, I'm sure. But on you go.
Yeah, I've heard Quentin Tarantino say that Joe Dante became a director to make Gremlins 2. That was what it was all leading to him. And like effectively Gremlins only exists so that the world could have Gremlins 2. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to kick this off with an absolute wild hot take. I'm going to throw this out there. Gremlins 2, The New Batch, predicted the January 6th riots at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
You see the guy, he's got the fucking Viking horns.
Tell us why.
You telling me that is a huge gremlin energy. Flipping big gremlin energy. It's very similar to this film. I mean, of course, your character, who's the property developer, Clamp with Clamp Towers, very much based on Trump and Trump Towers.
Yeah.
You know, it's not too subtle a reference, because, like, that was what was going on at the time. And, similarly, this film also shows a lot of chaos with a very low body count.
Yeah. Although, you know, you've got the mass of gremlins just they're taking over the society, you know, just absolute irrational, extremities.
Yeah. That sure as hell looked to me like all those QAnon fellas like rushing in the place.
Exactly,
and then taking selfies. Because that's what you do when you storm the headquarters of a secret paedophile cabal. You get your selfies in. Obviously, you fucking break up the Illuminati, but you get your selfies in first, because you won't get a chance when you leave. You don't get a second run of those things. So I get it. But, so Gremlins 2.
It needed a sequel, didn't it? Gremlins needed a sequel, and I was interested to see, because I loved Gremlins, but I felt like the story was unfinished there. You started up such a distinct character and character set. There was definitely more in there, and I'm actually surprised there weren't even more Gremlins movies after that. You know,
if the only thing that can trigger a track is this Mogwai that's still alive getting wet, like.
What a brilliant idea, though.
Yeah, that's something that could go tits up at any given moment. Like, one thing I do like about Gremlins 2 is that it's a sequel that takes the piss out of the original. They actually do it in the dialogue. They discuss possible holes, like what if the gremlin is eating on a plane and it's going through a time zone, and like what if it's eating and it gets a bit stuck in the back of its teeth, well, so it isn't eating after midnight, but if it doesn't get it out till after midnight and then consume. Hilarious. You're taking the piss out of your own movie. Like, that's.
Yeah, no, there's so much in that film, isn't there, to love? And for me, the villains of the piece, you know, Stripe and some of the other ones, and ruthlessly blending their friends or microwaving their friends, and just the methods of death and torture that the Gremlins do to themselves. It's just one of the best things I've ever seen, and they do it with such a charm and such a humour, and you're actually. I was rooting for the Gremlins really to take over the world and destroy everything. I mean, come on, you got BB Kate's boring. Who wants that kind of world where everything's sugary sweet? No, I'm there with the insurrectionists. Me, I'll say I'm a QAnon believer now.
Yeah, I'm with them. I'm with them. Let them rock. As soon as that one gremlin takes the brain serum and then he can talk and communicate and they got a voice, it's like, yeah, I'm on board with this. I understand that you're a threat to humanity. Humanity, not that great.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's let him rock.
And he has a sort of like John Hamm and Mad Men sophistication to it. It's like, well, hello. He's got that sort of laconic style. I think there's something here that we really need to discuss on an intellectual basis.
When he's interviewed by the guy who's like the horror host that's in there, that whole sequence, it just slays me every time. Well, first we want to see some Broadway shows, but we need to find out how to get tickets, and there's also a lot of street crime in New York, but I understand we can watch that for free. I would like a word with you about reaching your potential. I love that character. Like, I mean, the Gremlins in the original one, it's the slight variances that make them, like, you can tell each Gremlin apart, even though they're basically the same kind of thing. There's an individuality to them in the original. This one, we step up the levels. We get Bat Gremlin. We get Spider Gremlin. We get the Girl Gremlin, who I'm pretty sure it's implied that guy fucks at the end.
Yeah.
I like that. The female Gremlin fucks.
Yeah. Yeah. The tarty one.
Yeah, that's...
But don't tell me you didn't think about it yourself. Anyway, you were definitely like, would I?
Yeah.
Might go there. Imagine that. Getting a bit of gremlin ass. You'd love a bit of that.
Yeah, you'd have to at least check out what a Gremitalia looked like.
Or maybe not. I mean, that's part of the attraction.
The labia majora would be exactly like the big ears that just flap open.
You know what they say, every hole's a goal. And it's one for the autobiography as well, isn't it? Certainly, you know, you're not going to forget. What was it?
This is it, man. Sometimes you've got to sometimes flipping like I swipe right on Daniela Westbrook on flipping Bumble recently. Sometimes you've got to do things you don't want to do for the story. She didn't swipe on me, by the way, so we're not getting that story. But I would have gone through with it if I had to.
His name escapes me for a moment, but I'll try. But the American playwright who wrote Sexual Perversity in Chicago, and the one who wrote the Jack Lemmon salesman thing with Kevin Spacey and Glengarry Glen Ross.
David Mamet.
David Mamet said, "You never in sex, you never remember the orgasm. You only remember everything around the orgasm. So, for example, the thing you remember about the sexual experience was, next morning, did she cook you breakfast? Yeah. Was there something about her physicality that was either humorous, was bad, was good? But it's certainly never the orgasm that you remember. So, in that regard, shagging a gremlin would be a good thing because you're going to remember it. And like I say, it's one for the autobiography.
That's it, man. I'd have to get a few selfies in there. Maybe I could get Martin Scorsese to film it in 35mm and keep it in his little archive.
That's it. Get Freddie to shout out a few things to Jeeve along as you
Hell yeah. Yes. I feel like we could do a whole podcast of the film, but I think we should kind of like move over to our final official selections of our non-official, non-definitive lists.
Okay.
So, okay.
Right. Okay, well, here's mine. And this really is my number one, and this won't change. And it really does, I think, answers all the questions about being a great film, but also a great sequel. And I think it's undisputed. And in a way, it's almost like going to be a cliched answer, I suppose, but I am going to pick it, and that is Godfather 2. And I'll start with my story of the film Godfather 2 is that I watched Godfather and then Godfather 2 in fairly quick succession when I was about 12, I would say. So I was quite young.
Double bill them?
Well, no, it was on subsequent weekends. There, I remember they were on subsequent weekends on the BBC Two late night, and I loved them. I didn't really understand that much about them, but I loved them. And then since then, what's generally happened is I've gone back to the Godfather movie, just 1 and 2, not 3. Although I have watched that again, even recently actually. And I go back to these films, and every time I watch them, it's normally about every 10 years I'll see them. There's something new in there, and it's definitely tied into where I am at in life, and what I can see and what I can draw from primarily Al Pacino's character, and this is why I actually honestly prefer Godfather 2 to Godfather, even though Godfather is just the most amazing movie. But Godfather 2 plays with that thing that I've just talked about, which is the idea of where we are in a certain stage of our life. So we have him.
The same person at a different point in their life is effectively a different person.
Yeah.
But simultaneously the same, like,
yeah, and you
go through evolutions.
Yeah, and they play with that in the film. So you've got, obviously you've got Marlon Brando's character, Don Corleone, but you've got De Niro playing him as a young man. So you've got essentially this parallel between the young Don, played by De Niro, and then Pacino, kind of in the same place in his life, and it's that just about to become, or just about to touch greatness, and you see the two, and they're both at different stages in time in history. Yeah. But they're essentially, in a way, the same story. But they're not the same story. And it's generational, and it cuts between one and the two, and they have this and they look at this concept of De Niro Don Corleone as a boy is sent to America from Sicily because of the horrendous blood feuds, and what a horrible world that must have been. Where, and they even say in the film, like, all the men are dead. And it's for any chance of survival, he's got to go to a new world, and he grows up in that new world, and essentially, alone. He's not alone, I know that, but it's certainly, they see it as a personal, I hate using this word, but journey, and at the same time, we've got Al Pacino's journey as well, and only his is informed by the innocence and the ignorance of what Don Corleone had to go through when he first came to New York, and I just love that parallel between the two of men growing. And I remember even say I watched. I'm aged 49 now, and I remember when I watched Godfather 2, aged 30, which is probably my third or fourth viewing of it, and I still didn't fully get the if you don't know, if you haven't seen Godfather 2, if you're insane and for some reason haven't seen Godfather 2, the final scene is just a shot on Al Pacino sitting in a chair thinking, and it's open to interpretation, I suppose, what is going through his mind. And at 30, I could still not get what it was about him sat in that chair. I couldn't. I just saw it really as the ending after he's had his brother killed and all this kind of thing. But 10 years ago, so when I was about 40 or 41, and that viewing of Godfather 2, and I watched it, and that final shot when he sat in the chair and he's the Don now, and all the trouble and travails that got him to that point. And I could see all of that in his mind. But equally as much, I felt like I'd moved somewhere in my life by the age of 40, and had various experiences, and how it is I'd got to that point in my life as well. How did I get there? How did I get to 40? And for the first time, that shot, even though nothing said, he's just sat in a chair thinking, I feel like I got it. I felt like I could understand his pain, the trauma of life, all the events that had brought him up to this point, and even though he was supposed to be at peace, there was no peace. And who sat there, and yet that was life. That was life. They're right there in that chair, and I cried. I actually cried. So even though I'd seen it before, even though I knew what was going on, it was the first time.
Something different to you at that point in your own personal
exactly.
journey.
It was so profound. It was so profound, and because all, of course, it does brilliant. There is when you show something, when you, a human being essentially judges. So when you look at something, you're essentially, when you judge something, you're judging it yourself because you're basing it on your parameters, the things that you apply onto it. So I was essentially, I'm not saying an Al Pacino in any sense, but I was that person sat in the chair, and it forced me to think about certain things in my life, the good and the bad, and where I was, who I was, and at what stage in my life, and what period of the life that I live, and that was so profound, and it was so, and there's not very many films that have touched me in that way, that have had, not just entertained or told a great story or whatever, but actually forced me to look at myself and ask myself, what is, why am I here? What are we doing here? But it's that is for me what the genius of that film. So even though it could have even, you could have not watched the first I wouldn't advise it. I would advise strongly watching the Godfather movie, the original. But you could almost have never had even made the first Godfather for Godfather 2 to still be this standalone piece that it is.
A masterpiece by your standards.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Godfather 2, real talk. Yeah. Okay, so I'm about to pull up the next one, but before, because this is going to be my last selection, well, I'm going to hit you with a proposition that I think we should do another sequel cast in the future. Yeah, because I think I've easily got another 5 in me.
Yeah,
and like there's things like aliens and stuff that neither of us have mentioned.
Yeah, it's not been mentioned, and it should have been mentioned, really, shouldn't it? So perhaps another time we should come back to that. Yeah, absolutely.
I think we come back and do another one of these at some point. We do another sequel cast.
Yeah,
because I've easy got another 5 in me, easy.
Well, I've got another 3 on my list right here, ready to go. But I'm happy with the ones I've picked so far. I have to say.
Yeah, it's been some fantastic selections. So I'm going to box off this final one with my one of my favourite films of all time, not just sequel, or consistently number 1 on my letterboxd. It is Evil Dead 2.
Yes. Another clap. Yes.
Yes.
What a film.
Incredible piece of work. There's some people that describe it as effectively a remake of the first one, but that's not accurate in my opinion.
No.
I feel like the first 10 minutes, they remake the whole of the first movie because they didn't have access to the rights to it, because they were more inexperienced back when they were operating in DIY manner. They couldn't get all their own footage, so they effectively remake the original within the first 10 minutes. And that original is such a crazy film with so much happening on it. Compressed it all down into 10 minutes is insane. And that's the first 10 minutes of this movie, and it's not the craziest 10 minutes of the movie.
Can I just say as well, while we're talking about Evil Dead itself, is like, I think Evil Dead, in comparison to Evil Dead 2, doesn't even compare. And actually, you can... I think what they did at the start of Evil Dead 2 was exactly the right thing to do, and it kind of puts into perspective the difference, the gulfing class between Evil Dead as a movie and Evil Dead 2 as a movie. I mean, Evil Dead 2 is the movie. Yeah. Again, you could say Evil Dead was establishing it, but Evil Dead didn't establish it in a way for what then came in Evil Dead 2. It's like this wholly original new idea, which just happened to be
and the style
have the same name.
And the style of direction, which is like because Sam Raimi, when they made the original one, they're doing stuff like they're having multiple credit cards that they're paying one off with the other and just getting their money that way, and just putting things together with whatever they had lying around. And they did an amazing job of it. But now there's this guy who's like so innovative, so outside the box was thinking, because in a lot of cases he's forced to by his lack of budget, time constraints, and just being able to put stuff together with his mates. So when you give him the money, you get something truly, truly special. And that's exactly what Evil Dead 2 is. And ultimately, we bring Bruce Campbell's performance as Ash to the forefront. Like, it's incredible with like the Three Stooges influence. Like, he's a one-man Three Stooges in a horror movie that still manages to be sympathetic and maintain some stakes. You're rooting for him. You feel sorry for him. You know, you genuinely feel it when he's got to chainsaw his girlfriend's head in half. You know, yeah. The break over to insanity as he puts a knife through his own hand. His hand is his enemy now. It's all turned against him. When he's cracking up, when everything's laughing about him, everything.
There's so much in there, isn't there? It's so rich. There's so many. There's the overall themes are just great. There's small vignettes and there's just so many moments that are just individual to Evil Dead 2 that are just great, and you see nowhere else. And you mentioned him, his performance just carries that off. That would not have been the same film without him as the lead. I don't think. Yeah,
the fact that the relationship between him and Raimi from growing up together so early means that like that they work together with like the physicality of his role is like, it's not okay for a director to ask an actor to do that. It is not okay to ask him to do those things. But it's kind of okay for one mate to ask his other mate, you know, and like, we get stuff that when he's being chased through the house by the camera, and I believe they had a plank set up so it's smashing from all the doors, like, that is just carnage and chaos, and you could probably do something similar now with CGI and like very clever edits. We have the technology to do that now, but back then you were just running around a camera on a plank.
And I think as well
through an enclosed space with a guy being chased and flipping taking on all sorts of wild health and safety risks. I think that was the only way of doing it.
The experimentation that they do with the direction and the ideas there and it was Evil Dead 2 that did it, has set up some of the horror tropes that we've had subsequently for 30 years? Must be 30 years since.
Yeah, and even like some of the styles of the camera work that have affected like so many other genres, like that frenetic style of camera work, like, you know, like, if we don't have that, do today's superhero movies look like the way they do?
Exactly.
You know, I don't think they do, you know, like, so, I mean, and that comes full circle because, of course, I'd say the first successful modern era superhero movie was Spider-Man, directed by Sam Raimi, and he's coming around. He's doing the new Doctor Strange movie. So I'm not the biggest Marvel
Cinematic
Universe fan, no, but I like the Guardians of the Galaxy ones because they got like the dead good soundtracks and all that, like. And I've had to watch a few films that I'm honest completely suck in order to get myself ready, because I'm not going to miss a new Sam Raimi multi-million-dollar film in the movie. Of course I'm going to watch that. So I've had to watch a few films that I'm not so cool on, like, but I am ready to go.
Another example of another Sam Raimi that you think you've had to suffer to get to
no, I'm talking about the Marvel films I've had to suffer through.
I see, yeah.
Because it's all this, like, this is the thing, I'm not too big on like, you can't have 40 movies on a connected film. Like, I've got to watch too much to understand it. Yeah. But, like, I haven't seen the new Spider-Man yet, but apparently, like, a lot of what happens in the Spider-Man sets up stuff that's going to be happening in this Raimi-directed Doctor Strange. So I'm going to check that out at some point. But, yeah, there we are. But Evil Dead 2, what... You know, if someone tells me they don't like Evil Dead 2, you might prefer another one in the series, but if you say you don't like Evil Dead 2, I'm going to assume you've got some kind of agenda against horror or an agenda against fun.
Yes, horror and humour. That I think is one of the best examples of the meshing of the two. And
very hard to get right, like, flipping. If you go too comedic, you lose the stakes. If you go too scary, it's not funny. It's a very hard balance to strike. Attempted so many times, rarely ever mastered. And this is an example of it, straight down the middle.
And not only that, and you mentioned about its contribution to the cinematic world of today in terms of directorial style, but I think also it's contributed to I hate this word, but like the zeitgeist. But like it made horror something more than it was up until that point. It was Evil Dead 2. What done it? It was the one that made horror horror for me. I think it was the film that suddenly it was almost like a respectable genre and a genre within its own right that could have respectability for the first time.
Because we're not just killing disposable teens here. You know, we haven't got like a virginal final girl like who survives the film because she's a virgin. We just got a dude. We got a dude we can relate to.
Yeah,
fucking, we got a flawed character,
and its contribution as well to society as well. I think even say musically, it's like I know it's saying in I'm a fan of drum and bass music. And,
hell yeah!
And the a number of songs that have sampled Evil Dead 2.
Yeah,
and it's,
Dead by Dawn.
But
I think that was a J Magic Wicker Man one. Or there's so many like.
Yeah. So it's just even things like that. You know, this
you could easily put together a really heavy hour set of just drum and bass and jungle tracks that have an Evil Dead sample in. Yeah, easily.
Because the thing about that is you to be able to be sampled and have the respectability to, you know, actually be able to sample that without looking like an idiot, you know, or weakening the strength of your tune by your choice of sample. But like, it's, you know, Evil Dead 2 does have that respectability to it that means that it can be stolen for musical purposes, you know, for sampling. There's so much about it. I really do think that Evil Dead 2 was a line in the sand in cinema. I think most people underestimate how important that film was to. There's so many people.
I think, like, you know, you only move a few years on, and when you get and like the directors that are changing the game are your Tarantinos, your Robert Rodriguez. You had this like these like new young directors that have grown up on this kind of stuff, and they've seen.
And it's not even necessarily Evil Dead; it's Evil Dead 2
specifically.
Evil Dead 2.
What a film! Incredible. Well, we're coming up to the hour and a half mark, so I think we can call that a pod. Like, as I said, we were going to like do a couple of like honourable mentions, a couple of runners up, but I'm feeling this is just such a rich scene that we haven't really tapped fully. I think at some point we should come back, do another one. So if you think, feel free to drop in the comments if you think there's anything. We know the stuff was missed. The stuff that we've missed from our own phones today. There's a lot we missed. But if there's anything like that, drop a comment. Let us know what you think of our... Drop a comment down if you're watching on YouTube or if you're watching on podcast platform, because I'm also going to be releasing this audio only, so contact us that way. Let us know what you think of what we said, whether you agree, whether you disagree. If you're on YouTube, give us a like, you know, leave a comment, give it a share if you so feel, because, you know, this is all right.
Well, I'm definitely interested in knowing what people's favourite sequels are as well.
Yeah. We want to hear your favourite sequels.
Do you disagree with what we said? Have we been talking a load of guff today? Have we been talking rot? Or is there something to the ones that we've suggested?
A deep cut out the box suggestions. If you've got deep cut out the box suggestions, I will definitely appreciate them. Maybe there's something that we haven't even thought of that is due a rewatch.
Something stand out and we've just missed it completely.
Because everyone has those ones. It's like Scanners 3 for me. No one talks about Scanners 3. I will talk about Scanners 3. What is your Scanners 3 The Takeover? Let us know. Well, thank you very, very much for our guest, Rory. I'm Kinell. This has been Sinister Cinema. Safe.